My name is Thomas Garchinski. I am a 23-year-old Métis adventure photographer and filmmaker from Turner Valley. Today, I'm going to share with you guys a little bit about what I do, how I do it, and why I choose to do it, I guess. So I'm going to show you a little bit of video about where I am at right now currently.
Sometimes those freak accidents happen, and it just really matters how you weigh your risks.
That fell on his head.
You just got to be thoughtful about where you're going, what you're doing, what the conditions are, and sometimes there's going to be days where it's just absolutely perfect out. It's going to say, no, not today. It's as simple as that.
We usually avoid crevasses. Today we're finding them.
Okay, so now that you've seen where I'm currently at, let's take it back to my first experience within a harsh environment. The Athabasca sand dunes. So if you don't know what the Athabasca sand dunes are, I don't blame you. It is a small provincial park in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan, and hardly nobody knows about it. But it is incredibly beautiful. So during COVID, my father and I got a little restless and we wanted to go on an expedition. So we planned a trip to the Athabasca sand dunes. Within my research, I was only able to find 2 professional looking photos of people actually walking on these sand dunes. So I made it a mission to be able to capture it and its true beauty. So they're very difficult to get to, and we wanted to get to them in a bit of an unconventional way. My father and I traveled 760 kilometers in a 12-foot rowboat over the course of a month, just to be living off the land and off the grid, just to be able to get a couple of photos of this place. Within my research, the initial goal of this trip was to capture photos that no one had seen before. But on the first day of when we were supposed to launch, a huge storm brewed almost instantly, and it really scared me. And my new mission for the month became survival. And during our trip, we faced many moments of extreme discomfort, one being mosquitoes. So as you can see, my dad's wearing a head net that protects us from like thousands of mosquitoes, but on the second day, I actually lost mine, and so I spent the rest of the month getting used to mosquitoes sucking on my face. Even through this discomfort, we had many moments of true beauty.
Under the ever watchful eye of the Maker, the life asleep inside the ground awakens.
Throughout this whole adventure, my father and I both lost 20 pounds over the course of the month, and about 75% of the food that we ate was fish that we caught. Fish gets a little bit old when you're eating it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but the other 25% was a mixture of trail mix, soup, and canned ham. So in the third photo there was a bit of a sandstorm. It actually doesn't look too bad in that photo, but in getting that shot, small sand grains got into my camera, and when I moved the shutter and aperture dial, it grinded the gears and made manual useless. So I had to shoot auto for the rest of the trip, and that was before we even got to the sand dunes. So I was a little bit nervous. So even though my dad and I faced many adversities, we were still able to complete the expedition. We survived, and I was able to sell some of my photos to Tourism Saskatchewan, which was a gigantic goal of mine. When we returned to the Canadian Rockies, I felt a need to explore them. I saw them in a bit of a different way, and I wanted to get deeper. Winter came around, and I knew it was time to explore a little bit deeper. So we started to explore some of the ice caves. For an entire winter, I focused on exploring these ancient places. I felt a strong connection to my soul. The solitude allowed me to connect to my deepest self and gave me the same feeling that I had on the sand dunes. Over time, though, I truly realized how dangerous these places were. Guarded by avalanche paths and deep crevasses, they aren't easy to get to. Their unpredictable nature proved itself when a part of the cave collapsed when me and my friends were inside of it.
Where is that?
So it's kind of hard to see, but that piece of ice was the size of a small fridge, and if that had landed on one of us, we would have been turned into a pancake. This drive to go deeper consumed me. The need to capture photos of places not many other people could was all I could think about. A dream of mine was to capture athletes pushing the edge within the mountains. For all of 2023, I shifted my focus and dedicated my entire being to mountaineering. In order to photograph mountain athletes, I realized I had to become one myself. So this included rock climbing, ski touring, glacier travel, and ice climbing. These skills showed me an entirely different side of the mountains, one filled with potential. It also inherently brought a lot more risk. Over the last 2 years, I had a handful of crazy adventures while rock climbing. Over that, one of the most memorable was the Grand Sentinel. A big part of exploring the mountains is knowing when to turn around. And an example of this recently was climbing the Grand Sentinel. Hey Pete, do you copy?
Copy.
We're about to start climbing.
I think we're gonna call it. We're gonna wrap down. I think it's not meant to happen today. Both of us are kind of feeling off, and even though Adam's climbing good, it's not our A game. So we think we're gonna bail before mistakes are made.
So One of the reasons that this climb was so memorable to me was because it taught me to trust my mind. I often think that there's two types of fear when doing this type of work. I'm always surrounded by fear, and I like to think that there is rational fear and internal fear within my soul. And it's kind of hard to decipher sometimes, but on the Grand Sentinel, we decided to bail because I had fear within my soul. I was pretty exhausted, and I knew a mistake was inevitable, so we decided to turn around. One trip that worked out was summiting Mount Assiniboine. 4 of us set out to summit this beautiful mountain. The first time I saw this mountain was 8 months prior on a ski touring trip to the park. At the time, it seemed like a distant impossibility. We wanted to summit it to prove to ourselves how far we had come in our mountaineering journeys. On the approach, we had some complications, which forced us to perform an emergency bivvy and sleep under the stars on rock. After the overnight bivvy, 2 members of our party did not feel it was okay to make the summit push. They had internal fear. But me and my mountaineering partner Mikey made the push to the summit. I was just going to put a short part of a short film I made, but I decided to put the full thing in. So it's just 5 minutes, but it's of our ascent of Assiniboine. Hind Hut, do you copy?
Yes, we copy.
We've successfully summited Mount Assiniboine. We're on our way down.
No way! That's so sick. Congrats, boys. I hope the views were amazing.
There's this quote from this mountaineer: "The mountains are not a coliseum where I fight for glory. It is the cathedral where I practice my religion." Assiniboine was a mountain that we could prove to ourselves how far we have come over the past year.
Yeah, so I turned back. My legs were too tired. I went up the approach, got up to where the climbing started, and I was like, I probably shouldn't push it.
Mikey, where are we?
Oh, we're just below the red band on Mount Assiniboine. About to cruise up this pitch. I think we're gonna leave the ropes in the pack for this, but it doesn't look too bad.
Yeah, but Mikey and Tommy seemed like they were going strong.
That's good.
They were moving up pretty quick.
I feel like it's even scarier watching someone do this rather than do it yourself.
They got about 5 hours until their turnaround time. So we'll see.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to move pretty damn fast.
pray for the best. Unfortunately decided to stay behind as my legs have just been cramping like crazy over the last 2 days, and today they're just super sore and fatigued. It was a difficult decision to make, but I think it was the smart one.
This is the last pitch, Mikey. This is your lead. Mikey and I are gonna hold hands. Or at least just walk beside you. Okay, we're holding hands. Oh my god.
By simply proceeding further, which was generally possible, I was able to go all the way to the summit, which had seemed impossible.
You just wrote that?
I read it in an old book of mountaineering glacier travel. We've successfully summited Mount Assiniboine, and we're on our way down.
I don't know if you can see, but their lights are just below that big gray section.
And the boys return.
Here you go, good sirs. There's more water inside.
Look out.
Fucking 15-hour day, boys. You guys got back to the water.
Wow.
Cheers.
So this trip was a little bit less of a photography trip and more of validating ourselves as mountaineers and becoming the athletes that we wanted to become. I also realized how hard it is to truly capture an adventure when you're not used to a certain environment. When you're focusing on staying alive, it doesn't make too much sense to pull out your camera. Another big adventure that really stuck out was photographing a moulin. If you don't know what a moulin, I think it's moulin or moulin, but if you don't know what they are, they're these gigantic holes in glaciers that are formed by the pooling of water, and because the water is above freezing, it drills a hole straight down into the glacier. This one that we found was 35 meters deep, and so we rappelled in. Indra, do you want to explain what we're doing today?
We're gonna be chasing crevasses. We usually avoid crevasses, but today we're finding them.
So I set out to actually try to capture this moulin, and I went with the intention to photograph and video it. Some challenges that I faced was this is actually shot in the middle of summer, and if you know anything about ice melts when the sun is on it. And so in order to rappel in there, we had to build an ice anchor, which we put 2 V-threads, 6 ice screws, and a picket in the ice. That should be a lot of protection, but after on that anchor, we had the climbing rope and my single rope that I was attached to. And after one round of photographs, we came up to take a break, and we were able to just pull all the screws out, pull the picket out, and our V-threads were almost melted out. So when I was Jumaring back up, I wasn't on too much protection, which was a little nerve-wracking. Another challenge about photographing in this type of environment is it just takes a long time to get your shot. I initially rappelled down and had to tell the athletes where to go. And for every single shot, I had to ascend the rope, find where I wanted to go, place a screw in for myself, pull out my camera, actually off my harness, and get the shot. So it's quite a process to be able to capture a place like this. And this is me rappelling in. You can actually see my camera hanging off my harness under my butt, which I think is pretty cool. But all these adventures kind of led to the Booming Ice Chasm, which is one of the most difficult places I have ever photographed to date. The Booming Ice Chasm is a 140 meter deep coal trap cave guarded by a 1.5 meter entrance. The air within the cave gets trapped, and it makes the ice, or it keeps the ice frozen all year round. So this was the most difficult location I have ever photographed in my 7 years of doing this. At the entrance, the ice was about 60 degrees, which made setting up my tripod extremely difficult. So right now we are in the Booming Ice Chasm, and this is the most difficult place I've ever photographed. I'm on about a 60-degree slope of ice, and I had to secure my tripod to a screw. It looks like a mess, but it is very secure. And we got the boys going way down there. This place is crazy. So the darkness in this cave felt like it had a physical pressure on us at all times. A quote that I like is that it felt like we were trespassers in a realm where light has been long banished. So some technical parts of this photo is I had to open my shutter for about 4 seconds, and we played around with light for each shot for probably half an hour. We were in the cave for over 13 hours, and the endless echoes and darkness made claustrophobia set in eventually. One thing that was pretty scary was on our way down, none of us were too scared, but on the way back up, we realized just how much exposure was actually below us. And a thought kept running through my mind that if I messed up, I had a 140 meter slip and slide to my death. So I did not want to go on that slide. So you might be asking, why do I do what I do? In all honesty, making this presentation, I had to ask myself that because I didn't know. But I figured out 2 reasons that explain this. The first one is that I am very good at managing fear. We have these perceived limits within our minds that say that we cannot do certain things because it is too risky. But ever since the Athabasca Sand Dunes, I've learned that once you learn how to be comfortable surrounded by fear, once we feel comfortable surrounded by fear and not let it control you, then you can be limitless. The second point is that I see a camera is not just a tool, it is an excuse to explore the world. A lot of the times I don't take my camera out with me on adventures. A lot of the times I just like to experience it for myself. And what should you take from this? Well, we all have different types of fear. There is great power in learning how to embrace fear, and all fear is manageable. It doesn't have to be a barrier, it could be a motivator. And before I take questions, I put together a little bit of a slideshow of some of the photos that couldn't make it into this presentation. Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Do we have any questions?
Were you along the Athabasca Sands? Is that on the Athabasca River?
No. No, it's along, what's it along? I think it's called Athabasca Lake. For some reason, I'm drawing a blank right now. But it's by Fort Chipewyan and Fond du Lac and Stony Rapids. Yeah.
How did you get involved with this? What's your background that got you into this, your history, I guess?
So for photography, I've never been formally trained. I've learned everything myself. But for adventuring, I think it's just my own drive to want to see the world. Yeah.
Do you use drone photography, or have you thought about using drone photography? What would you do?
At the sand dunes I did, but the drone laws in the Rockies are extremely strong, and so it makes it very difficult to justify putting it up and trying to get photos. I really wish I could, because there's a lot of things that you could do with the drone and a lot of things you could create, but have to go to Norway or other places in the world for that kind of stuff.
Do you think you will want to travel to different places in the world, or do you prefer staying around here and photographing where you grew up?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely want to travel more. It's a huge goal of mine to make films for companies like North Face or Patagonia. But just getting there is you need a lot of money. So just trying to make ends meet. So I don't do this full time. I shoot weddings and corporate work and different things that do pay the bills. But adventure has been slowly becoming more and more fruitful for me, but not quite full-time yet. Yeah.
Who are the photographers that have inspired you?
So obviously Paul Zisco is one of them. I got a few of his books, but I think the main one is Jimmy Chin. I've picked apart, I've probably watched Maru over 20 times and broke his documentaries apart. His photography is phenomenal, and I really like the way that he tells stories. I find that it's very easy on an expedition to the mountains to get caught up in like telling the story of getting to the peak, but the way that Jimmy tells a lot of his stories in his book is he chooses a small moment from that expedition that he emphasizes. One example is he was doing these first ascents in the Karakorums in Pakistan, and it was the first time that he was climbing with this really big climber that he always looked up to, named Conrad Anker. And Conrad would always wake up way before Jimmy and this other climber and would have coffee ready. And Jimmy, being the new guy wanting to prove himself, wanted to wake up before Conrad and kind of beat him to it. And so on the last day on their summit push, they agreed to wake up at 3 a.m. and Jimmy woke up at 12 a.m. And he was starting to pack everything up, and Conrad turned on the light with coffee already ready for him. And reading that story really stuck with me because he could have easily told about the climb and how they got to the summit, but out of that entire expedition, he chose to tell that one story. And I found it very valuable because it's obviously stuck with me. So I see storytelling as not only through photography and videography, but through writing and everything. Like you need everything to properly show a story and get it across to your audience. Yeah.
Do you see yourself more as videographer or photographer, or how do you see the balance within your work at this point?
I find it kind of difficult because I see myself as both, but on an adventure I have to choose beforehand if I want to be a photographer during that adventure or if I want to be a videographer. Because especially by myself, it's very hard to capture an adventure on video if I'm also taking photos at the same time. So beforehand I have to decide if I was going to be a photographer or videographer. So it really depends. I would say I see myself a little bit more as a videographer, but I want to start doing more photos and kind of journalism and writing blogs more about some of our adventures. Yeah.
I commend you at your age of 23 or less on some of these for the times that you made the decision to turn around.
Yeah.
Because maybe that's the reason you're still here today. There's a lot of people that haven't made that decision.
Mm-hmm.
Is this more or less a group decision, or is this an individual decision, or how would you classify that?
I actually have one of my partners here, Mikey, who I do a lot of the adventuring with. So what would you say, Mikey, to that question?
I think when it comes down to the individual, it's like the individual can turn around at any point.
Yes.
And that's why with the Assiniboine trip, we were able to go two people stayed back while two went on, but it's not always the option if you want to stick together. I don't know, I think part of it is going out there with a group that you really trust. I know Thomas and I, and Adam, who's our other partner, it's become pretty clear at certain points when it's the right time to turn around, and it's almost like the discussion is pretty unanimous before we even speak. I mean, I think we had that happen just on, whatever the place was.
Corey Dubes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we made the choice together.
of clear that that was the right choice. So.
Yeah, so we went to do this climb called Corey Dubes, which is, I think, 5 or 6 pitches of dry tooling. So it's in the winter, and it's a mixed climb with ice and rock, and very alpine and exposed to the elements, but it's kind of a beginner climb to warm up on, or to get your feet into the alpine. But on our approach, we saw a bunch of slough, which is basically like mini avalanches coming down the face of it. And I don't think we were all kind of like, this doesn't look good. And then we decided to take a moment to just watch it. And so we sat and pulled out some snacks. And right when we did that, size 2 avalanche popped off the face, kind of right beside the climb. And it looked pretty big. So we were like, yeah, that's probably a good call. And so, yeah, like Mikey said, I think it's usually pretty unanimous. Like we all have similar headspaces when it comes to it. We all trust each other. So when one of us wants to turn around, usually all 3 of us are thinking it. Yeah.
You have really good intuition. How old were you when you picked up your first camera?
So I think my mom gave me her Rebel T3i when I was in grade 12. So I would have been 17. And I remember she always took photos of flowers, and I didn't find that very interesting. So I was like, why are you giving me this camera? But right around the same time, I started getting into hiking, and I'd take the camera with me. And I started an Instagram page called Photo Tours, and I started posting there kind of as a joke, but a lot of people in my high school were very supportive and kind of took it seriously. And so I was like, well, I guess I gotta keep doing this. And when the winter came around, a few of my friends were models, and they wanted me to take some photos of them. And I was like, man, this camera thing is kind of cool. And so I actually went to university for microbiology and immunology for 1 year, but in that 1 year, I knew that photography was what I wanted to do. So I left, and I've been pursuing it ever since. Yeah.
Is your Métis background part of why you go out in the wilderness?
Yeah, I would think so. I definitely think it's a huge part of what I do. I am very spiritual when we are out in nature. I was raised with the indigenous beliefs, and was taught that the land is the one true thing that is within our world. And so I often say that when I go into nature, that's me going to church. Like when I'm climbing mountains, that's where I'm closest to God. One thing that I picked up on the sand dunes was because we had such a small boat, a lot of the locals in the towns would be very scared for us. If anyone knows boats, we had so much gear in this boat that we had 5 inches of freeboard between the top of our boat and the water. So if like a medium-sized wave came, it would like come into the boat. So it was a little bit scary, but the Aboriginals up there told us that we should be feeding the land with tobacco. And it's basically just saying thanks and hoping for safe, or praying for safe passage. So a lot of the times when we go on adventures, I have, you're supposed to give something that's worth value to you. So to some people it might be nicotine, but to me it's moonshine. And so I have a flask of moonshine, and when we are doing something specifically a little bit dangerous, we give a little bit of moonshine to the land and take a swig and ask for safe passage. Yeah.
Okay, what I really liked about the presentation is that we get to see the dangers you go through, because usually when we see the pictures, beautiful pictures of extreme sports, we don't know about those dangers, and this really puts it in a totally different perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, sometimes I don't actually notice like how much danger there is in some of the stuff that we do, but I heard a quote recently that was like within mountaineering, a lot of the times we convince ourselves that we're safe when we go out there, but the mountains are extremely unpredictable. A lot of the best mountaineers in the world have died from avalanches and rockfall and stuff that you can't always predict. And so it is quite a big risk, but it can be managed, and listening to that inner fear is kind of how I decide to manage it.
So what is more scary for you, photographing an ice fall, you know, you're inside a moulin and all that, or an irate mother-in-law at a wedding?
That's a hard one. I actually, when I shoot weddings, I get along with the mothers very well because they're the ones that is paying me. So I make it an effort to always dance with them, which is kind of funny, off topic, but I filmed a wedding at the Banff Fairmont, and it was this big Italian wedding, and I was dancing by myself, and after I finished working, and a bunch of the Italian grandmothers came over to me and taught me how to dance. And the next day we were doing a shoot with a couple around Banff, and we ran into some people, and this guy came up to me and he's like, "Dude, you're stealing all the women from everyone." But I kind of found that funny. I guess a moment that I found very special in the sand dunes was it didn't really get dark all the time because we were pretty far north, and it was like 2 a.m. and I heard these clicking sounds outside of our tent, and I got up and opened the tent, and there was these gigantic dragonflies, like this big, like huge, eating all the mosquitoes. And so I gave my dad my camera. The video didn't show up very well because my dials were all messed up and I didn't realize I had to shoot auto at this point. But I have a kind of a crappy video of me sitting outside of this tent with these dragonflies circling me, eating all the mosquitoes that were trying to get to me. So that was a pretty magical moment. Like on that trip, we had a lot of very spiritual moments. My grandparents were from that lake, and they died 1 year before my father and I went. And after we had gotten to the sand dunes, we were walking back, and a song that my grandparents always sang just randomly started playing on my dad's phone, and he has like 1,300 songs on his phone. So it felt very special to, it felt like they were there with us and guiding us through that adventure.
Do you think it's involved water trips?
Sorry, what's that?
Do you think it's involved water trips, rivers?
Yeah, actually, that's a good segue. One of my biggest goals for the near future is to go to the Nahanni. I've already been. I was working for this oil company, and they were doing work around the Nahanni, and I kind of expressed how badly I wanted to go. And they said, well, we'll cover your cost and not pay you, but we'll give you a helicopter ride into the Nahanni. And I was like, heck yeah, that sounds awesome. So I got to go to Virginia Falls and fly through, and it was incredible. But now it's a huge goal to pack raft in. I believe it would be pack rafting about 100 kilometers. And then I want to hike to the Cirque of the Unclimbables, which are these huge remote faces. And it's like a 40 or 50 kilometer hike in with all your gear, and then spend probably 2 weeks in this place called the Fairy Meadows, which is in the middle of all these huge mountains. And I want to go climb those and then pack raft the 200 kilometers out. So that's a huge trip, but definitely need a little bit more water experience for the team.
Have you taken Swiftwater Survival?
I have not.
you do that before you go on your next trip. It is crucial because what you learn will teach you. And I've been through the Fraser Canyon with 12-foot waves in a whirlpool.
Yeah.
And I watched two of my colleagues be sucked down by a whirlpool, and luckily they came up.
Wow. Yeah, scary.
Yeah. The one guy, he's the kind of guy who jumps out of airplanes. He, for 6 hours afterwards, shook because of the fear.
Yeah. Yeah, water is scary. I have a bunch of friends who whitewater kayak, and they tell me stories, and I'm like, it's kind of like mountain biking. It's like, I'm okay. Like I'll climb rocks, I'll do all this stuff, but that seems a lot more safe to me than going down on a bike and breaking your collarbone, or or going in white water and hitting your head on a rock or something. I find that a lot more scary. So, yeah. And the bank account doesn't allow for everything. Yeah. Any more questions? No? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Randy Thomas, that was a terrific show. I really enjoyed that.